Hey guys, in this video, we will build a simple Python project which is a dice rolling simulator app using Python. By building this project, we will be able to enhance our programming skills, and this is, perfect for someone who is just getting started with Python, and at the same time, they want to work with Python functions, loops, and user input, and then error handling. So without further delay, let me show you what we are going to build, and then we will build this project from scratch. Let me run the script first to show you what we are building. So this is actually a dice simulator app. So when you run your script, it will ask you how many dice would you like to roll. So it's basically how many dice you want to roll. So you can select a number of dice like 1 to 100 or more than 100 or anything. So I will simply select two dice and then hit enter, and it will return a random number between 1 and 6. So in dice you will have six faces, right? And each faces will have a number from 1 and then continuing to 6. So when you roll a die you will get a number between 1 and 6, so that number we are going to generate randomly, and then we will return it to the user. So once you complete with that first set, it will run in an infinite loop. So in the next time it will again ask you like how many dice would you like to roll, and if you want you can continue, you can give the number, and if you want to exit you will simply type exit, then it will exit out of that infinite loop, and you will have an user experience like with a message like thanks for playing, with a decent good message. So this is what we are going to build. So without further delay, let's jump in and build that project from scratch. So I have cleared out the screen now. So the first thing is like whatever the selection may be, whatever the user input is, we are going to generate a random number between 1 and 6, right? So for that, we obviously need the random library to do that operation for us. So the first thing is I am importing that random library. It's a built-in library, so you don't need an explicit installation. So I have imported the random library. Now we are going to mimic that. We are going to write a logic for um, creating that random number between 1 and 6 based on the user selection. So for that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to write a function, maybe name it as dice simulator, and then we need to pass one parameter which is the user input. So when you seen that, right, like when I ran the script, it asked for how many dice would you like to roll. So that's the user input. The user is going to enter something, maybe a number. That number we are going to use, and we are going to pass this a parameter to this function. So I will name it as number of dice. So we got the user input. So the first thing is like the user can enter anything in that user input, right? The input function, like they can enter 0 or starting from 1, or they can enter negative values as well. So we have to handle that. In case if that user input is 0 or negative digits, so we have to return an error message to the user that you have to enter a valid number. So that's what we are going to do as a first step. Like if that number of dice is less than or equal to 0, then we are going to simply raise value error. We will handle this once we start to write the main function. So for now, in case if that number of dice is less than or equal to 0, then we are going to raise a value error. So if not, if the user is entering a positive value or a greater than 0 value, then we have to create a random number between 1 and 6, which is going to mimic the dice simulation. So for that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to write a for loop. So and then maybe before that I will create one list, empty list, and then I'm going to random dot randint, and this should be between 1 and 6, and I will create one variable random role, and then what we are going to do is like we are going to put that random role into a roles list. So roles dot append random role, and as a final step we are going to return that roles list. So this will have the generated output, I mean the generated selection between 1 and 6. So now we have a die simulator function. So the next step is to create a main function for our script. So that will be like an user interface for when you run your script in the command line, then you will have a message, right? That how many dice would you like to roll, and then based on the user selection, it will run the die simulator function and return that rolls a list as an output, and then it will continue to ask further, and based on the user selection it will decide, right? So for that we are going to write a main function, def main, and in that we are going to create an infinite loop. So this loop is for keeping that screen active. So here what I'm going to do is like let me you know get the user input first. User input, that will be using input function and with a message, how many dice would you like to roll. So now we have an input function to get the user input, and this will be coming as string. Remember that the input function, whatever the user enters in that command command line, that will be coming a string. So before passing that data to that die simulator function, we have to transform it to integer value and then pass it to the die simulator function. So that, keep that in mind, we will do that part. So before that, in case if that user wants to exit out of that game or exit out of that script, they need to enter exit. So we will handle that way. Like if the user is entering exit, then the infinite loop will be broke, and the user will come out of the screen. I mean, the come out of that execution with a beautiful message like thanks for playing. So we will check that user input dot lower, which is equal to exit. Then we simply break out of that uh, you know loop before print that message thanks for playing. So now we have handled that exit case, and also now we have a user input as well. So now let's pass that user input to our die simulator function that will give us the output. So let's print and at the same time call that die simulator function, and now you remember that we need to pass that value as an integer. So I'm going to um, use that in function and pass that user input value, and now that die simulator, we are passing that value as an integer. So now we have everything, and also we have to handle our exception scenarios. Like what I mean is like in the user input part, like we are when you run the script, it is asking for user input, right? At that time the user can enter anything other than numbers as well. They can enter abc or anything, or a special characters, or any value, right? Any key input. So in such scenario, if it's not a number, we have to handle that exception as well. So for that, what I'm going to do is like I'm going to simply put all my code logic into an try except block, And in case of an exception like value error, I'm going to print an message like please enter valid number. So what we'll do is like we are going to wrap this enter piece of code in between try except block. And in case of an exception value error, I'm going to print a message like please enter a valid number. So now we have handled everything. So when you run the main function, it will run an infinite loop, and inside that loop, the user message in an input function will be called with a message like how many dice would you like to roll, and based on the user input, if it's an exit, then it will break out of that infinite loop with a message like thanks for playing. And if it's not an exit as an input, if it's number, then it will we will pass that to as a parameter to dice simulator function. There we are checking if that number, then the selection is less than or equal to 0. If it is less than or equal to 0, then we are raising the value error, so that will print the message please enter a valid number. And since this entire function is inside the loop, then the loop will again execute everything. So if it's not an less than or equal to 0, then we are using the help of a random module, then we are getting a random number between 1 and 6, and we are adding it to our roles, which is a list, and we are returning that input. So that's what the logic is. So as a final step, I will simply write a main, check if it's a main. So now we have written every piece of code. Let's run the script. So how many dice would you like to roll? It's asking for a user input. Let me check the negative scenario first. Let me run the negative digits, -2. So now it is asking a please enter a valid number, because it is considering a -2 as a not a valid number. So the infinite loop runs, and it is raising a value error. So in case of a value error, we are printing that please enter a valid number. So that's why it print the please enter a valid number, and the loop continues, and it is again asking for a value to enter. So this time I will again check a negative scenario, like I will enter maybe a character this time, A, B, C something. Then this time also it is asking me to please enter a valid number. So negative scenarios, it is working fine. So now let's enter a number 1. Yeah, it has given me the role, I mean the dice simulation, but it's not user friendly. I mean the whatever the value that is printed in the terminal, it's not user friendly. I mean it's printing as a list. We don't want that, right? For example, if the user is entering 3 dice to roll, and it will give me an list of numbers, so that it's not a user friendly, right? So what we have to do is like we have to unpack this list and print the values. So we are going to simply put an asterisk before that function, because the die simulator function will return the values as a list. We are going to unpack that list, and we are going to print it. So at the same time, we have to give a separator. Separator is a comes from print function, so it basically to print in a nice way. So now let's test it again. It's still, running. Okay, let me exit and clear it, and die simulator. Let me give to. So yeah, now it has, print in a much cleaner way, right? So now let's test exit as well. So yeah, exit is also working. Let's try for 4 dice. It has given me some random. Let me try 4 again. Yeah, random 434. Let me try 4 again. 66614. Yeah, and 5 again for 6. Let me try 100. Yeah, it has given me it is actually generating a numbers between 1 and 6. So cool, right? So this is how you have to build a die simulator uh, project, and by building this we will be able to practice uh, programming skills, and also focus on specific topics like Python functions, loops, and error handling, try except block, and also the user input. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have liked this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe. And as usual, thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.